till you make it and have more sales conversations. More sales conversations. You'll finally start making money. After 200 sales conversations, not closing any, that should be a freaking clue, right?
What are our favorite and least favorite parts of running our own business?
Right now, or like of all time?
I would say like the journey. So, but
the journey
also,
of running a business.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for you, after roofing, you did your book and then you did your coaching, right? Was that kind of the process?
Yeah, it was more like roofing, books, speaking, coaching, consulting.
Mm-hmm. With a couple part-time jobs thrown in the mix.
Yeah.
And then so for me, it was retail, my book, and then just little entrepreneurial ventures.
Mm-hmm.
So I never went super big. Still haven't, which is okay.
We're not on the $1 billion list yet.
Yeah, and I'm not super trying to either.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that journey of like, what were your favorite parts up to today, where you're doing something completely different?
I think the favorite parts is, of course, in retrospect, my favorite parts were the lessons I learned about myself and how I work, how I operate, my fears, my courage, I guess. Because, going through all of that journey, most of it wasn't making money. Right. And for me, and that's most business owners' issues, is not making money, whether it's marketing or the actual sales process itself. For me, I was fine with lead generation. I was fine with all of those things. I could not close a sale. So we said this on a podcast beforehand where I, spoke on stages for an entire year and I was able to collect 200 appointments where from speaking, I said, hey, let's have a basically complimentary coaching call or consulting call. And at the end of that call, the whole purpose was to see if they would fit into a program. Most of these people did. And we would get to that point and it just wouldn't happen. These sales would not close. So I didn't make money from speaking on stages with lead generation. I'm very good at helping people do the speaking and do the lead generation. And then I finally got to coach myself to overcome that whole not able to close sales. And when I did that, I literally went from like a zero to hero kind of thing. No money to making $15,000 coaching packages and doing just great. Like if I kept doing that, I know I would be in a very, very different place than where I thought I would have been, 5 years ago.
Okay.
But, and then I started teaching people how to put all that together. And there's the thing that you find out there. I kept being told, you just got to fake it till you make it. Right. So that's what I was doing for a whole 2 years. I was just talking and getting on podcasts and speaking on stages and just fake it till you make it and have more sales conversations. You'll finally start making money. After 200 sales conversations, not closing any, that should be a freaking clue, right? Actually, at 100, it should be a freaking clue. But I kept going because people kept saying, oh, no.
Just grind. Just do it.
Yeah. So for me, the lessons I learned from all of that was really helpful. But what I hated through all of that was not getting good advice early from others. I was always listening to the typical entrepreneur stories, right? And they're great, but they really don't give you results. They give you inspiration. They give you this hyped up feeling that we all get at those conferences. But when it comes to actual putting it into practice, it's not cookie cutter. And that's how they're designed. And that's something I have issues with, we talked about.
Okay. We talked about that in our very first episode. Or maybe just in our watch party. Definitely one of those
everywhere, I feel like.
Yeah, but it's almost better to learn from people who are just a step or two ahead of you.
Yeah.
Because they can actually relate to you. Where Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, they can give you this high-level advice, this super motivating advice, but the specifics of where you're at today doesn't necessarily translate to just keep pushing through, which you do have to keep pushing through, but you need to really look at what's not working and fix it.
Yeah, kind of that. It's insanity if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Even if you make micro changes, I feel you can still be insane.
Yeah.
So Yeah, you need to sometimes do a complete overhaul. So that was my, I guess you could say, ice and fire.
So your favorite one was the personal development lessons.
Really, the big,
you became.
I feel like it's actually just having a big transformation. Okay. That was my biggest win. Because we all like to feel like we made huge progress, right? So I could say that's definitely a favorite. And then my least favorite was just not getting a good advice early.
Okay, perfect.
How about you, David? What's the number one thing you loved, or in your past, what's the number one thing you've loved about this journey, and what's the thing that you hate the most?
So you took my answer, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Is because I'm a completely different person than I was 5 years ago, 7 years ago. Like, I'm more social and more, like, I couldn't stand up in front of a crowd and talk, a handful of years ago. Like, I was so introvertedly terrified of being in public, which I think we talked about too. So without copying your answer, I would say it's actually the people that I've met on my journey to becoming the better version of myself. A whole different life when you have people surrounding you that have goals, that have dreams, that are supportive, that you can say, hey, I've got this ridiculous idea. Like, that's a great idea. Instead of pointing out all the flaws with that ridiculous idea and why it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, it might not work, but hey, you should go for it. And I really, number one, I love being that person for other people. And it's great having a world with those kind of people around me.
That's good. So what is it about meeting the people along the way? Is that just the support aspect? Or is that just feeling like you have friends now? Like, for me, it was feeling like I had friends. Yeah, it's much less lonely because I've talked about it before too. And like, the entrepreneurial journey is really isolating. Yeah. When you're saying, hey, I think the world could be different. And I think, like, entrepreneurs to me are the artists of the world. So we are really painting the vision for a better future through action and through actual changes to the way things work on the planet. Like, look at Airbnb or Uber. Now we can push a button anywhere in the world we are, and a car will just show up and take us to wherever we want to go. Magic. In the 90s, do you realize how, like, mind-blowing that was? That no one could think of that, or think that would be a reality. But now it's like standard, right? Right. And I kind of see this mirror effect happening between entrepreneurs and the world as well, where it's just this constant innovation, whether it's innovation of self, or it's innovation of product or the world. Yeah. And I think it's actually kind of cool how you said that, is that entrepreneurs paint the world. Yeah. And for me, history, art buff as well, I went straight to Renaissance, because I was even thinking when you're saying that, I was like, entrepreneurs are the types of today's of Da Vinci's in a way. It's like, you're not only the inventor, sometimes you're also the business owner. Absolutely. And so, so we're all Renaissance masterpiece. Yeah. Mistresses. Masters and mistresses. Yeah. Mastresses. Mastresses. Mattresses. It's like mattresses. What? That's my favorite. Probably my least favorite is there is definitely like a barrier to entry of comfort in like putting yourself out there. And because it is like art, right? Like, I remember, this is this worst example, but like in high school, like all the girls would like, at least in my high school, girls loved writing poetry. Very few guys did it. I don't think any guys that I know actually wrote poems in my high school. But the girls, it was like the thing. Is this the poems where it's like roses are red, violets are blue? Or is this like actual like actual poetry? Trying to be poets? Okay. Okay. So, but they were putting their passion into these poems, but they would never show it to anyone. Yeah. Right? So they would do it for themselves, keep it, and then never show it, because it's very revealing to show someone that like inner passion. Yeah. And it's the same when you create a business or have a business idea for like the vision of a new world. It's like, hey, I can help coach people through divorce, but I don't want to advertise because, like, what if people don't like me? Mm-hmm. Or what if I fail? Or what if this? Or what if that? And that's where the personal development aspect comes in. Right. Is getting over that. But the hardest thing is
getting the coaching or the strength or the inner fortitude to overcome that hurdle of exposing yourself to the world.
Why do you think that is? Why do people have a fear of being seen?
Because to me, I think traditionally we're very, at least in America, we're very made fun of for being good at stuff at an early age. If you get straight A's, you're made fun of. If you're the best in class, you're made fun of. Even with my ex's kids, they would play video games. And when someone was getting really good at the video game, they would just chew them out. And they're brothers, right? So they had 3 brothers.
Wow.
They're like, all you did was grind and practice all night. You're so lame. And it's like, yeah, he did grind and practice all night.
That's called dedication.
That's why he's kicking all your butts at Fortnite today, right? So it's a weird dynamic of discouraging success.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a pretty early age. I'm trying to think if I ever had a time when I was a kid for being made fun of that I was good at something. I was always made fun of for being different or weird, but not like, I don't think I've ever got criticism when I was young for being good at something.
Okay.
So that's interesting that you say that.
But you were homeschooled, right?
Right, but I was always in homeschool groups. I was at church groups. Like, I was around kids and I was in sports. I was around kids a lot.
Yeah.
I just didn't have any siblings, but I was around them a lot.
Factor too.
So
I think it's different when it's like your everyday classmates, because there's so much more drama and competition and cliques and
true.
Public school is especially public middle school.
Yeah, my mom actually had
like
a specific zone. Like, she was like, you are never going to a public middle school. And I was like, deal.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah. Although I did go, actually, I'll take that back a little bit. I did go to a private Catholic school for 3 whole months because we were trying something new.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I just love everybody who has been to a Catholic private middle school because you have been tormented. Oh my God.
Yeah. That's coming from like the teachers, right?
For me, yeah, it was mostly the teachers. And that actually, now it's sparking traumas, thanks. So,
what's what we're here for.
No, but it's true. It's whenever I was told I wasn't, that was where I got told I wasn't good at things, was really the teachers.
Yeah.
My handwriting is atrocious, like all this other stuff.
Yeah.
You couldn't make it because you were homeschooled or your dad's gone or like, that shit they would say.
Yeah.
But there was this kid.
That's so terrible.
It is.
Like an adult saying those things to a kid.
Yeah, because they are dead inside.
Yeah.
That's just how I have to put it. These teachers, these specific teachers were dead inside. But there was a kid who, and this is that middle school dynamics, right? And I feel like we still do it today.
Yes.
In your adulthood. There was this kid named Chad, of all names. His name was Chad, and he was mean to me. He sat next to me because it was alphabetical. And he always sat next to me, and he was just like mean. He'd be like, "You're so ugly. You're so this. You're so that," because he was attracted to me.
Yeah.
Right. In middle school, that's what they do.
Right.
Weird. But of course, I was like, I don't know why he hates me so much. Like, my mom put me into a few rounds of therapy because of it. Because I wasn't able to navigate what was going on. One day he'd be like, "You're so pretty," and the next day he'd be like, "You're so ugly." And you're just like, mind fuck, really? And so, like, think about that today. You even get that in toxic relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Manipulation and all that shit. So
withholding love.
Yeah.
And
so he would make fun of me when I would do something well. Like, I would get a B on my test rather than a C because Catholic middle school sucks. And so, but yeah, he'd be like, "Oh, you got a B. You're so smart now." And I'm just like, wow.
Yeah.
I hope, Chad, if you're watching, you've gotten shit figured out.
You sent her to years of therapy, or maybe months, probably
just
months.
Like 3 rounds.
3 days of therapy.
3 days of therapy.
Is on your conscience now, Chad.
Yeah, Chad.
From middle school.
This is why Chads are Chads. Yeah.
Pent up regression.
just a bit.
Regressed anger.
No, not at all. So it's interesting how let's talk about that for a second, because I think even our own minds can do that, right? Where we become the Chad in our own mind. We're like, "Oh, you're so great. This is so awesome." And the next day you're like, "You are absolutely horrible.
Oh, to ourselves?
I hate you." Yeah. You just totally flip. What is one thing in your journey so far that you got advice for? And it was good advice, but you just weren't really listening.
Ooh, that's a really good question. Is it a pregnant pause if I don't start speaking?
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah. So my answer to that question would be to...
While I'm thinking of my answer.
Yeah.
Because that was 5 minutes of me
just sitting there. Longest pregnant pause ever. So for me, it would be getting out of or graduating from things when I know I should, because I was in things for probably a little bit longer than I should have. One of them being Toastmasters. So Toastmasters, for those of you just tuning in, is a club that's all around the entire world. Literally, you probably have like 10 just within 5 miles of your own house. And these are clubs for leadership, communication, and public speaking. And so I started doing that when I was in the roofing business, just trying to increase my sales. And I just was a natural at it. I just started doing really, really well. And I did it for almost 2 years straight. And that was the beginning of my speaking even. So for 2 years I was speaking, 2 years I was doing Toastmasters. And it felt like, now people could definitely argue at this point, but it felt like towards the end of that, I was like, I'm not getting any more feedback from the people in the group. Like they're just saying, oh, you're so great, because they don't have any feedback anymore. So in a way, I've graduated from the group. And so I needed to graduate and just do public speaking. I probably was in about 6 months longer than I should have.
I think for me, the one thing that probably held me back the most, it wasn't necessarily, well, kind of. So it was the advice that I would get to stick with something for longer. Actually.
I should quit.
It's the opposite
and you should go longer. That's funny.
Yeah. And because I have that, like, I want to do this other thing, this other thing, this other thing. So, like, the first thing I was trying to do was launch a wine label. That was my first, like, business venture, which is why I started Colorado Mastermind. And that was just a really difficult, it's just, there's so much red tape with alcohol, you know? So I kind of dropped that and put it for a later date. Then I was going to do, like, a supplement company, which I could have done well with, but I was just kind of tired of supplements. And then it was, like, wine distribution, which had I stuck with that, it was like the happy medium between like creating wine and selling it. I could have I had a really good business plan and a business model for that industry. And had I stuck with that, I would have been successful sooner. There are some blogs that I started years ago also. Never published them. Actually, I made 100 of them. Never published them.
Whoa. It's probably more than I've done in 6 years.
Like poetry. And this is back in the early days of blogging where it would have been successful. And there's at least 2 other experts, quote unquote, out there, self-proclaimed experts that are doing really well now. 10 years later. So I think for me, it's just really giving up on things right before even TikTok, right? Like I was my following was like quickly growing and then I just stopped. So it's not sticking with things long enough and going through the like discomfort of the successful part.
That is really interesting because I feel like that is a lot, if not most people's problem. What was it? It was somewhere around business owners quit their business after 2 months. I was like, 2 months.
That's crazy.
Right? Actually, I was like, you haven't even gotten an email at that point. You know what I mean? Like, what is going on? What industry is this? I don't know. It was just like Forbes magazine or something put that there. And but yeah, somewhere around 2 months, most business owners quit. This is where our fact
checker would be like,
do you need Google? But it was like 2 months, and so I was like, that's crazy to me. And it kind of goes to show that if something's not making traction early, people will quit.
Absolutely.
But for you make traction and then you quit.
Yeah, because I make the traction and then I'm like, oh, this is just going to be fine on its own. Let me go start the second thing for whatever reason.
Or you get bored or you get frustrated because you're ADHD.
It's more the ADHD kind of thing. Like,
because literally just today, you're like, I'm so unmotivated because I'm bored with this podcast. It's like, that makes me feel loved, David.
Not bored of it. It's just like we're getting into the routine. We're getting good at it. Setups quicker. The editing's going much smoother.
Yeah.
We've got like this flow down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, now what?
Oh, God.
It's no longer difficult.
Oh,
right.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
And so it's both ways, right? So
mm-hmm.
starting something new lets me learn something new.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's led to my personal growth.
Yeah, it's everyone, I feel like. Yeah.
But it also limits the income potential of whatever venture that is. And on the flip side, it's not necessarily my goal to make a whole bunch of income. Yeah. As long as my bills are paid, as long as I have some fun money, I'm happy.
I also think this 2-month, I quit, or even I get to a point and I quit, or I'm not quitting soon enough. All of this kind of comes to the end goal. Yeah. What is it that you're trying to go towards? Mm-hmm. Do we have those answers?
I would imagine more people who quit after 2 months have no end goal in mind.
I would imagine so, yeah.
And I think you probably had a more clear end goal in mind, which is why you stuck with Toastmasters.
Yes, I just knew speaking was going to be involved in one way or another. Yeah. And so I had to really do well with it. Mm-hmm. But then it started to become a thing that you find in Toastmasters, and you can find in anything, especially business or networking events or conferences, is you feel like you have to continue being part of that group, that club or that circle. Mm-hmm. And if you break away from that, you risk failure.
You're out of the group.
It's unfamiliar. Yeah, you feel like you're kind of breaking like a loyalty barrier or something like that.
I think Toastmasters specifically is really good at that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's members that have been in there for legit 40 plus years. Yeah. And for them, it's more of a social aspect. Mm-hmm. But then you meet people who, and this is extremely common, and I hope it changes. So you get involved in these networking groups or clubs or whatnot, and there comes a point where you literally need to get away from it. Mm-hmm. I always tell people, if you get into something, you need to actually want to graduate. Okay. Because if you're joining Toastmasters, you can be part of Toastmasters for 40 years. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But you need to identify when you've graduated from it to move on and to expand and to do more. So you get these groups of people that were just like, you're in it for 40 years or 10 years or 20 years, and you all know these entrepreneurs. You maybe have met them, or maybe you're one yourself, where you literally have not gotten anywhere today that you were a year ago, but you're still doing the same things.
Yeah. And that is interesting. And that's actually something that I don't understand, because there's a lot of industries this happens, right? Mm-hmm. So I personally love those networking events just because a lot of people go to either learn something or sell something to the people there, right? I'd never have anything to sell. So I actually go to meet people and to learn about their businesses, their companies, whatever. It's just fun to me. Like that business, especially the startup thing, is like, I'm passionate about it and I find it really fun. So I like the people that are there. But you definitely see the same people at every event. Mm-hmm. And it's really neat to see that when they don't implement the tools that they've learned, it's steps 1 through 5, how to launch your company. And then a year later, after they've gone to the same thing 10 times, they haven't launched those steps 1 through 5. Mm-hmm. Maybe they've done step 1, but they never got to 5. Why do you think that happens? If they're consistently in the environment, they've got a community of friends who are supportive, they've got coaching that is giving them literally the exact steps to get from point A to point B. And all they have to do is take the action, but they don't take the action.
I don't think there's one answer for that. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you could just say fear, right? A lack of inaction, of actually doing the work. Because I remember, I had my own clients that would join my programs and they literally did nothing with any of the information or coaching that we did. Yeah. And I would just have to have like a heart to heart and be like, you haven't done anything. Mm-hmm. Why? And it's literally just a lack of belief in self. For me, I was in a high level coaching program, actually. I've been in ones where people have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. And literally did nothing.
Same. I've seen that.
And it's like, we literally are doing everything for you. You just got to give us stuff. Yeah. And they did nothing.
Yeah. After spending 50 to 100 grand. Right. Like that to me, because there was one where it was like 50 grand and I saw so many people, they would like break down in tears because they were so excited they somehow found the 50 grand to drop on this program. And then I'd follow up with them just to chat like 6 months later.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, I haven't touched it. What?
I feel like, in a way, it's almost like a dopamine fix.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. You go to these networking events, you get your dopamine effect. You go to the Toastmasters, people praise you for your speech. It's a dopamine effect, right?
Okay.
You get into a program, it's definitely a dopamine effect. And then
you go home.
There's a lack of community happening, at least in-person community, to really kind of bring in those little fixes, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have a straight answer for that, but it's really become a huge problem, and people are really catching on to that behavior and their own behavior.
Yeah. And
they're just going, no, why would I pay 10 grand for that? Right. Why would I do this? Why would I do that? Especially if I'm going to get lost in the crowd.
Right. And so to me, because I like watching trends and how things shift and change, I really feel the coaching industry is switching from that, like, hey, here's all the answers, just buy the program and here's the answers, to being able to advertise graduation and completion rate. Mm-hmm. So the more people who complete it, the more valuable that course is going to be.
And I really think that comes down to vetting who comes into your program.
Okay.
At least to some point.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I talked to a lot of people in my world, and I was going, I got this program, I had the whole sales conversation.
Yeah.
And then at the end, I was like, this is not for you. Because I was catching on to who would actually start implementing and who wouldn't.
Okay.
And I started saying no to those who wouldn't implement. I was like, look, you want to give me $15,000? Great. Give me $15,000 and still do nothing. That'd be cool. But no, I'm not going to have you enter the program for 15 grand and you do nothing with it.
Right.
And a lot of the people were just really grateful.
Okay.
They're like, I think you're right. I'm not ready for this. And that's a big problem in the coaching industry. They'll sell you online, especially online, passive programs, not in person.
Yeah.
And it really does not serve this client.
Right.
And most of the time, they know. Oh, but if they just show up. Oh, but if they pay, then they'll show up. That's not true. And your stats show that.
Yeah. And that's what I would like to see, is more transparency and statistics in coaching. I think that would really help just the integrity of the industry.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really in this weird, rocky place, because so many people have been burned by coaches that either don't know what they're doing, they're dishonest, they're deceptive, and it totally overshadows the good coaches that are passionate and they care and they're really wanting to help people and they have really good tips and tricks to get them there. That's, for me, with what I do with my consulting, I guess I can call it consulting now, which is a word that I've been
4 years later
avoiding for a very long time, because I don't want to be a coach or an expert or a consultant, because of exactly that. Like, I don't want the responsibility of making sure someone does what's best for them.
Right?
I want to provide a free place where people can come and share ideas and get the resources. But I don't want the responsibility of being the coach that says you have to do it this way. And so that's what Colorado Mastermind is all about, is being an environment for people to come together to share with each other and not a specific coach.
Yeah.
And then with the consulting that I do, is it's actually like hands-on. Hey, we're going to set up your website. We're going to create your launch schedule.
Right.
We're going to do it together, because you got to get this done. Right? And it's cheaper than most of the $10,000 courses.
Yeah, preach it. And that's all courses too. It's on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the number one thing you're going to take away from our conversation today?
Today, the number one thing I'm going to take away is to enjoy the process of entrepreneurship. Because there is good, there is bad, but at the end of it, you get to become the new person that you want to be. What about yourself?
For me, I am going to quit. I'm going to quit things faster. Because I'm finding more and more that I really just need to quit things faster. I think I just posted on Facebook yesterday or the day before. I don't know if you saw it. But I was like, I'm done messing around with all this other shit that's out there. The people are just like, oh, you should go do speaking more. You should do this. You should do that. Oh, come do this. Come do that. I'm like, no,
You're like, no, get in a boat.
I am legit over it, and I'm just going to get my boat and be a live aboard. Instead of live abroad, it's called a live aboard.
Really?
Yeah, live aboards.
I like it.
It's a thing.
Okay.
So I'm like, no, I'm going to get my goddamn boat. So I'm learning to quit more and more and more and faster and faster and faster. But I think the podcast is safe. But everything else is good. It's going to be pretty much
I wasn't going to
gone.
say it because I'm trying to like do things longer.
It's an interesting dynamic we got going on here. Should it stay? Should it go? I don't know. I guess it's here for now.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening in to I Don't Know What the Fuck I'm Doing podcast.
Yes. And if you would like to follow us, learn more about us, join our community, go to our beacons.io, beacons.io /
Nope, it's beacons.ai.
Oh, okay.
/ IDK WTF POD. Just found that out today.
My bad.
I was like, oh, we've been saying that wrong.
Something else I have is .io. There are all these new
I know
things. So
beacons.
If you want to follow us, join our community, be eligible for super cool giveaways, prizes, and awesome stuff, you can find our Patreon through our beacons.ai, which is beacons.ai / IDK WTF POD. And if you put your email address in there as well, if you don't want to join any of the other super cool links, just put in your email and we'll give you something for free.
Yep. Every month we drop you all the episodes in the library as well as free somethings.
Free somethings.
Free somethings.
Something amazings.
We keep that vague because we probably don't even know ourselves.
We haven't made it yet, but it will be there
eventually
when you're there.
Woohoo!
So we'll all be surprised.
All right. See you next time.
And you are my favorite person, whoever you are.